You think willpower is a foundation that if you just had more of it, everything would lock into place. The diet would stick, the training would happen, the discipline would hold. And you've proven this before. You've used willpower to close deals when everyone else walked away, to build companies when the odds said no, to outlast competitors who had more resources, more time, more help. Willpower has been your edge. But here's what you won't say out loud. It's not working anymore. The weapon that built your success does not work here. Not with your body. You can still summon it for business, for the deal, for the crisis, for the board meeting. But for the gym, for the meal prep, for the consistency your body actually needs, it evaporates. And you don't know why. This is Iron Suits. I am your host, Marwan Killu. Let me tell you what's happening. Willpower isn't a character trait. It's a resource. And you've been spending it like a billionaire with no accountant. The problem is you've been treating it like it's infinite. Like discipline is a tap that you can turn on whenever you need it. But you can't, because you've already spent it. By the time you think about training, you've already burned through decision after decision, meeting after meeting, problem after problem. Your willpower account is empty before you even consider your body. And this is where successful men get stuck. Because the strategy that worked in business, push harder, dig deeper, force the outcome, doesn't apply here. In business, you can compensate with leverage, with a team, with capital. In your body, there's no substitute for consistency. And consistency doesn't run on willpower. It runs on systems that don't require it. Here's a thought you keep having. I just need to get serious again. Like the issue is commitment. Like you're not really trying yet. But you are trying. You're trying all the time. The problem isn't effort. The problem is you're trying to use a tool that isn't available when you need it. You're trying to access discipline at the exact moment your capacity for it is lowest. And the truth is you wouldn't run your company this way. End of day. After the decisions, after the fires, after the performance, that's when you expect yourself to show up for your body. And it's not happening. Not because you're weak, because you're depleted. Let me ask you something. What would your training look like if willpower wasn't an option? If you couldn't rely on motivation, discipline, or mental toughness at all? What would have to change? Most men never ask this question because the answer threatens their identity. It suggests that effort alone isn't enough, that the grind doesn't solve anything, doesn't solve everything, rather, that you can't just force your way through. And for someone who built everything on force, that feels like surrender. But it's not. It's strategy. When you remove willpower completely, you're left with one question. What has to be so obvious, so frictionless, so embedded into your day that it happens whether you feel like it or not? This is a question that separates the men who stay stuck from the men who actually change. Because most men are still trying to build a body that way. Rather, most men are still trying to build a body the way they built a business, with intensity, with sprints, with all or nothing pushes. But your body doesn't respond to quarterly thinking. It responds to daily inevitability. And inevitability doesn't require willpower. It requires design. Think about the things in your life that already happen without willpower. You don't debate about whether to check your email. You don't negotiate with yourself about taking calls. You don't need motivation to show up for a flight. These things happen because the cost of not doing them is immediate and visible. But your body, the cost is slow, invisible, deferred. You can skip today and still function tomorrow. You can eat poorly for a week and still close a deal. You can miss training for a month and still run the company. The feedback loop is broken, and without immediate consequences, willpower becomes the only enforcement mechanism, which means you're fighting a war you cannot win. Here's a part that's uncomfortable. You've been treating your body like the lowest status employee in your organization. You're treating your body like a low priority task. CEOs protect revenue. Amateurs negotiate with their standards. But things don't calm down. They never do. And meanwhile, your body is compounding in the wrong direction. The men I work with don't lack discipline. They have more discipline than most people will ever need. But they're applying it in the wrong places. They're using, the more willpower you use, the worse the system is. They're using willpower to compensate for a lack of structure. And structure is what makes willpower unnecessary. Most men think getting in shape means trying harder, more discipline, more motivation, more rules. But the men I work with don't do that. We remove willpower from the equation entirely. Because if your body depends on motivation, it's already unstable. Instead, we build structures, not random structure, strategic structure. 4 stages that remove friction and make progress inevitable. Strip, sculpt, shred, sustain. Strip is where we remove the noise, the metabolic damage from years of dieting, the chaos from trying to force results with willpower. Sculpt is where the structure begins. Training and nutrition designed for men who run companies, not men who live in gyms. Shred is where the refinement happens, not through suffering, but through precision. And sustain is a stage where most men never reach, where the body runs like infrastructure, no negotiation, no motivation required, just systems doing what systems are designed to do. You stop asking, do I feel like training today? You start asking, what has to be true for training to happen regardless of how I feel? You stop trying to summon discipline at 7 p.m. after 12 hours of decisions. You start designing your day so the decision is already made before you deplete it. This is the shift. And it's not motivational, it's architectural. Most men resist this because it feels passive. The ego would rather struggle than redesign. That same ego that says, I should be able to do this. Should is a word killing you. Because should assumes that effort and outcomes are directly correlated. Right? But your body doesn't work that way. It cares what you can do consistently. The Rolex arrived before the body did. Here's a test. If you had to train tomorrow and willpower wasn't available, what would need to be in place? If the answer exposes friction, you're still relying on willpower to bridge that gap, which means you're still one bad day away from nothing happening. The men who break through don't have more discipline. They have less resistance. The training happens because the alternative requires more effort than just doing it. You spend your entire career building systems that work without you. You've automated, delegated, optimized. But with your body, you're still trying to micromanage every decision. And it's exhausting. What if the goal isn't to build more willpower, but to need less of it? What if the real work is designing a system so obvious, so embedded, so frictionless that your body improves whether you're thinking about it or not? That's not weakness. That's leverage. The men who stay stuck keep waiting for the moment they finally have enough discipline. But the moment isn't coming. The only thing that changes is whether your body is part of the system or outside it. Force builds your company. Structure builds the companies that outlast. And the same rules apply to your body. You don't need more willpower. You need architecture. Because when the structure is right, discipline becomes irrelevant. And the body finally starts behaving like the rest of your life, systemized, predictable, compounding. And that's all I've got for you today. I hope this episode was helpful for you. If it was, make sure you share it with another leader, because as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. That's how we grow the show. That's how we spread the message. And again, if you found it helpful, make sure you leave me a positive review on iTunes. And even if it wasn't, you can leave him a bad review. Tell me how much of an asshole I am. I'm only joking. Yeah, a comment would be greatly appreciated. That'll help with the algorithm and help spread the message I've been talking about. Follow me on my socials. I am on Facebook under Marwan Killu, LinkedIn Marwan Killu Fitness, YouTube. You can watch this episode under Marwan Killu. And finally, subscribe to the show so you get notifications when a new episode goes live. Until then, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.